My name's Gary Hart, and I'm running for president.
How much is the public entitled to know about a politician's personal life? And ultimately, who gets to decide? These are the questions at the heart of the new film, The Frontrunner. The film is based on the true story of Senator Gary Hart's run for the 1988 Democratic presidential nomination, a campaign that derailed after the Miami Herald reported allegations that Hart was having an affair with model Donna Rice. Directed by Jason Reitman, who co-wrote the screenplay with reporter Matt Bai and former political operative Jay Carson, the film tells the story of Hart's doomed campaign through the eyes of his family, campaign aides, and a press corps wrestling with the idea of what is newsworthy.
Senator, I want to ask you some questions about the woman at your townhouse.
Can you tell us how you know her?
You can't be serious. No one is staying in my home. There's no need for that.
I am serious, sir.
I couldn't quite believe there was this moment in our recent history when the presumed next president of the United States wound up in an alleyway in the middle of the night behind his home with some other journalists. No one knew what to do because no one had ever been there before. I mean, it just sounded like a movie. It was a thriller.
Why are we standing in an alley on a Saturday night? I mean, don't you think you owe it to us to be forthcoming?
Oh, you.
You're denying what we've seen with our own eyes.
The only thing I deny is the idea that somehow you have the right to ask me these things.
You're running for president.
I'm aware of that, Tom. It's in the papers.
Well, you have a responsibility.
I know full well what my responsibilities are. Do you know yours?
It had all this connective tissue with today, all these questions about our public lives versus our private lives, gender politics, our relationship with journalism, and what we want to know about our potential leaders, what flaws we're willing to put up with in our leaders. And there's something about this moment in 1987 where we suddenly showed a very deep interest in Gary Hart, not only as a politician, not only as someone with ideas, but someone as a flawed human being who had made a mistake. We wanted to know more about that mistake. We've come to a point where we live in a culture that kind of revolves around shame in an interesting way. And if you are someone who experiences shame, you drop out of the race. But if you're someone who doesn't experience shame, not only do you stay in, but you thrive. So
you're drawn to the process.
Yeah, exactly.
You're drawn to the process.
So it is a process that that really supports the shameless.
But in this story, we don't have good guys and bad guys. We're not placing blame on any of the people in there. We're trying to show human beings who are faced with difficult choices and are doing the best they can in those circumstances that no one had ever faced before. And so we literally try to show the journalists as humans, the candidate as human, the operatives as human.
I got 100 kids unpacking boxes in Denver right now because we told them you would do what it takes to win this thing. I told them. People are sacrificing for you.
And I'm not sacrificing what? Should I sacrifice my privacy, Bill, my self-respect? And it won't just be me that gets dragged down. None of those kids you're talking about will work another campaign where some candidate doesn't have to account for who comes and goes from their bedroom. And that is just the beginning.
Okay, but we're not talking about that right now.
I am talking about that.
We're talking about how you get through today without pissing away everything we've all worked for on this campaign.
Bill, this campaign is about the future, not rumors, not sleaze, and I care about the sanctity of this process, whether you do or do not.
But between the two of us, we spent over 40 years in politics, and the broken system broke us. And so, you know, we came to this process has been somewhat cathartic, and I feel a good bit of catharsis every time I watch the movie. I've seen it over a dozen times now. Because, you know, we're exploring some of the story of how it got so messed up.
It's funny because I have a similar experience, and I watch it. I think, could that be me? Could I be in the alley?
Yeah.
Could I be where Tom Fiedler is? What would I have said in that post meeting? And I never find a really satisfactory answer to that. The answer is never. Of course not. I wouldn't do that. That's not realistic. And so you're always, you know, to me, it's you can watch it differently and come away with a different perspective every time.
Yeah, I see the operatives doing stuff that I used to do and think, oh, that's no big deal, and I see it on the screen and I go, ooh, that looks really unattractive. I can't believe I used to do that every day.
Reitman's earlier work also resisted passing judgment on his characters. In an interview about his critically acclaimed 2007 film Juno, which tackles teenage pregnancy, Reitman said, "I'm not really pro-choice, I'm not really pro-life, I'm libertarian, and I think people should make decisions for themselves." In his 2005 film, Thank You for Smoking, which delves into the alliance between politicians and big business, Reitman doesn't condemn cigarette use. As he told the Arizona Republic at the time, quote, "As a libertarian, I don't like government control. people should be left to their own devices.
I mean, you've self-described in the past as sort of a libertarian with a heart, or that sort of your political views. With that sort of worldview, I wonder what sort of discussions you guys had about this while you're hashing out the script of the story.
I mean, I'm like anyone. I look around and I wonder how the hell we got here. The conversation is so shrill. You go on Twitter and you just see people tearing each other apart. So I'm desperately in search of a reasonable conversation.
Yeah, I think our discussion as we were all writing this sort of iterative process, it was never about, it was never an argument over the animating questions or how we felt. It was more, is that real? Is that authentic? Is that the way it would really be? And is it complex?
The complicated part about making the movie in 2018 is making sure that everyone has an access point to the story, because it's not as much a movie about Gary Hart as much as it is a movie about a group of people trying to understand Gary Hart. And the first half of the film, specifically cinematically, follows over a dozen people at the Washington Post, at the Herald, on his campaign staff, in his family, men, women, young, old, veterans, newcomers. Each trying to understand an enigma of a human being who is not self-aware himself. And we kind of knew that, all right, each one of these characters we're following is going to give us an access point in. And at some points we have to stretch that a little. Like Anne DeVroy, an editor at the Washington Post, we gave her more language from 2018 when it comes to the women's movement, because that is part of this conversation. And at that point, while it is important for us to be accurate to 1987, it is more important for people now to be able to watch this film and feel as though they hear that voice within the argument and they can watch it ping pong off of the other voices within the film.
This isn't a movie I think people should or will walk out of going, now I've got the answer, but it is it is hopefully a movie where people walk out saying, and we've seen this in some of the initial screenings, is people walk out saying, I think he was wrong. I think he was right. I mean, you those are great experiences. We've all had the experience of leaving with your wife or your friend or whoever, and you're in the car arguing about what the movie was really about, who was at fault, what the decisions made that were critical. I think that's what we're going for here, is to let people think for themselves.